Thank you. Dr. Zanton, are you pro-choice with regard to patients making individualized medical choices?
Broadly, thank you, yes.
Are you aware that your university doesn't allow choice with regard to vaccination, that you require all of your students to have 3 vaccines in order to be students?
Yes.
So it's sort of choice, but not so much when regarding vaccination. Are you aware of the increased risk of myocarditis with the COVID vaccine, particularly with successive COVID vaccinations in males between the ages of 16 and 24?
Senator, thank you for the question. I'm prepared to talk about the nursing crisis and that we have vaccine requirements across the board for a lot.
Here's the problem. If you exclude everybody from being a nurse who believes in basic immunology, you're going to include a lot of smart people who believe that you can get immunity from both vaccination as well as infection. And if you say, well, we're just not going to take the people who believe in that old-fashioned infection thing, providing immunity, we're only going to take the people who will do as they're told. I mean, do you think individuals should be treated the same when they come to the emergency room? If you got an 18-year-old with chest pain and a 68-year-old obese diabetic with chest pain, do you think they get treated the same in the emergency room? There are differences based on age. We used to always make differences even on the flu vaccine. We advised it for people at risk. We've done this forever. This is the first time we've done it. We're now doing it with an experimental vaccine, one that's not been approved. Do you think that prior infection affects your immunity?
Senator, I don't make the choices about the vaccinations. That's at Johns Hopkins University.
Right, but you're a leader at Johns Hopkins University, and you could well have your opinion stated. Dr. Marty Makary is there, and Dr. Marty Makary has been very active in this. He has looked at the incidence of myocarditis, and he says it's 28 times more likely to get myocarditis from the vaccine than from COVID for a particular cohort of young men. Women it also applies to, but more men than women. I assume you have men and women in your nursing program. This is a big deal, and it might affect. It affects the Marines. It affects everybody else. We finally fixed it with the Marines. We're not making them do it anymore. But the thing is you're at an institution of higher learning. We should have questions. And I know sometimes we have to do as we're told, but you're also dean of the school. You have a voice. And we should be curious about things. In Britain, France, Germany, Norway, Sweden, Denmark, they don't have university mandates on this. Some countries don't recommend it for children at all. There really is a debate and discussion. You can have an opposite debate, but if you believe in choice, when something has a debate and there's arguments on both sides, you'd give people the choice. So the CDC did a study of 1 million patients. That's a pretty big study. It's an observational study, but it's a large study. And they asked, what are the chances that you will go to the hospital? And they divided it into different groups. One group was vaccination, and it showed a 20 times, and this has been repeated a lot, 20 times lowering of your rate of going to the hospital if you've been vaccinated. And I think most people accept that. Now, it doesn't stop transmission. So when you mandate this, you can't make any arguments about protecting other people. It's only about you at this point. But what they also found in this study of 1 million people was that people who had not been vaccinated but had been infected on a prior occasion by COVID were 57 times less likely to go to the hospital. So it isn't an argument against vaccination. I mean, if you haven't been infected, you ought to be vaccinated, but you ought to have a choice. You're not giving people any choice, and actually this applies to all your universities. None of your universities, I think you all mandate 3 vaccines. And frankly, I think the literature actually shows it to be malpractice. That's why you should all have a voice in this. A large study in Israel shows that the rate of myocarditis among vaccinated is about 1 in 3,000 to 1 in 6,000. There's another study that shows it's 40 times greater, so between 28 and 40 times. And this isn't an argument against vaccination. It's an argument for thinking and understanding that people of different ages could respond differently. And so my hope and what I would offer to all of you is that people should speak up. We are living in a world where everybody sticks their head in the sand and says, do as you're told, take 3 vaccines. And there are people with myocarditis that are seriously ill. Currently, I mean, think about this. Here's a question. Your 15-year-old kid has had COVID, takes the vaccine, and has myocarditis enough to be hospitalized. What would you do? Would you give him another vaccine?
Thank you. I will take into consideration what you've said, and I'll bring it back to you.
Well, it's an individual decision, and you ought to be able to answer, at least be honest and look backwards. The thing is the CDC says if your kid's had myocarditis, got sick and went to the hospital, as soon as he gets better, give him another one. I think most parents in the country would say that's a stupid idea and defies all common sense, and they would resist this. But when the government tells you to do it, and it's a really stupid idea that defies common sense, guess what? People lose trust in government. We want to have trust in the people running our medical schools and our nursing schools. But somebody needs to ask these questions. Dr. Marty Makari's doing it. Dr. Vinay Prasad's doing it out at UC San Francisco. And it's a growing movement, but I would hope that you all will open your minds to at least thinking about the choice of the individual in medicine.